But the action also, of course, is on all the deals that we're seeing in the pharma space. And we do have Mr. Adar Poonawalla now joining in, and we have come to know that Serum has actually converted what was a loan earlier in Biocon Biologics into equity. And all put together, now Serum owns about 300 million or has invested 300 million in Biocon Biologics. Adar, thank you so much for joining in and taking this call. I think the question on everyone's mind is, what's the intent here? What does the 300 million signal? Are you looking at a bigger stake, a bigger partnership with Biocon? And if yes, on what fronts?
Nice to talk with you this morning. You look, the $300 million at the moment is a large investment, that one of the largest investments we've made in a strategic alliance. This will amount to a 4.9% stake now, because the valuation of Biocon Biologics is close to around $6 billion, as I think Kiran Shaw had mentioned recently. So, look, I really respect and admire the biologics business that Biocon and Biologics has built, and especially with the recent Viatris deal. So to begin with, this is what we have announced and done. I don't know, and I wouldn't comment in the future if we will increase that investment or not. I know that there are many other investors also looking at taking a stake in Biocon Biologics, and I'll leave that for them to announce as and when those deals happen. But at the moment, this is what we're doing, and we're very optimistic on this business going forward. And you know, it's a little different to vaccines, so we thought this would be a very good strategic partnership to be able to, you know, offer our 100 million dose vaccine capacity also to them, perhaps make monoclonal and other antibody products also that they have. There are so many opportunities and possibilities with this alliance, so I'm extremely optimistic.
Adar, just to follow up, I mean, I'm taking off from what you just said, that you do know that there are other potential parties interested in Biocon Biologics. So since you see such an opportunity, as you say, wouldn't you want to beat the others to it? Because at 4.9%, I mean, you're under 5% equity. You know, at an sort of intent level, would you want to have more stake in Biocon Biologics?
Well, not at this stage. I won't comment on that. I think this deal has just happened, so we'll wait and see how they decide to take on more investors, and then we can see if I would increase my stake or not. But at the moment, this is all that we're doing, along with 100 million dose vaccine capacity that is available now. As you know, COVID vaccines, which was initially what we were going to make, and sell through Biocon Biologics, has now got a lesser demand. But we've got so many other vaccines that will now be made, you know, in our pipeline that to utilize this capacity going forward.
Okay, so that exactly was my question. My next question, Adar. Hi, welcome to the show. This is Ekta. Just wanted to understand that COVID-19 vaccines would now be out of the strategic alliance, the 100 million doses that you all have a distribution strategic tie-up with Biocon now?
No, it is a 100 million dose capacity reservation. So we could make COVID vaccines, and look, you never say never. There's always a booster market that we're looking at. So it's not limited to COVID vaccines. It's COVID vaccines and or any other vaccines that, we want to put through in this partnership. And of course, the other vaccines will take a little bit of time, as Kiran Shaw had mentioned in her statement as well. But look, this is a 10, 15-year horizon and vision that we're looking at. It's a 15-year arrangement. So there's plenty of time, to generate some good sales, through our other vaccines. And it's not just limited to vaccines that we make. In the strategic partnership, if Biocon and Biologics have opportunities and other vaccines that they find through their network and partners that they would want us to manufacture, we can manufacture that as well. So the agreement that we have now with them covers, and is not limited to all of these sort of opportunities.
Sure. Adar, just, a follow-up with regards to that. The peak potential or a peak amount of revenue which was estimated from this tie-up in 2021 was around $400 million with margins of around 35%. Of this 100 million doses, which Biocon Biologics will have access to. How much do you think it's probably scaled down to, or do you think it stays at around $400 million in terms of peak potential revenues?
No, I don't know where you were getting this figure of $400 million. I'll tell you, the prices of these vaccines, as you know, changes with demand. Now, I can't give any predictions or statements on the, future earnings and EBITDA and all that would be there. But we've got a profit-sharing arrangement in the agreement, which shares the profits, of the vaccines that will be made. So again, depending on the vaccine, depending on the price. It'll all fluctuate, and Biocon Biologics can then later give you visibility on that. This is just the agreement which allows that to happen. So even if you look at the COVID prices, the COVID vaccine prices, they were around $2 to $3 a dose, and there was the different profit sharing ratios and thresholds. So. There was never a $400 million figure.
That's probably what was assumed by. That was probably what was assumed by the market. But Adar, I just wanted a larger question with regards to what the plans would be in the pharmaceutical space for Serum. You have this tie-up with Biocon Biologics, which will give you access to the biologics market. You do have a tie-up with Wockhardt, which is for vaccines, but nonetheless. Are you at some level probably going to look to enter into the pharmaceutical market ex of vaccines as Serum?
No, I think anything we do now will be with Biocon Biologics in a strategic partnership, but I don't think we will get into making or having a separate vertical completely. So we'll wait and see how this partnership fructifies in the future, and we'll go from there.
Adar, just one question. Were you offered a board seat for your 4.9% stake, and would you be coming on board?
Yes, I was just discussing that. I do have the right for a board seat. I'm not exercising that at this moment because currently I'm preoccupied with Poonawalla FinCorp, and I've actually got a board meeting today. So yes, in the future I may exercise my right, which I do have, for me to be nominated from Serum to be on the board. And I will most probably exercise that right in the near future. Let's put it that way, but not at the moment.
Okay, Adar, Biocon Biologics is probably going to hit the markets, probably going to undergo an IPO by FY26. That's what the indicative timeline is. By then, maybe valuations could rise from the $6 billion as well. What is your larger intent with Biocon Biologics by, say, FY26? Would you want to probably exit during the IPO, hence you're just a strategic investor? Would you probably want a bigger share in the pie when it comes to Biocon Biologics? Currently, Biocon holds 71%, you hold 4.9%, Viatris holds a certain amount of stake. Any more investments that we could see, or would you probably look to exit in FY26?
No, all options are open, but I wouldn't look at an exit so soon. I believe in the long-term potential of this company. And as you said, look, $6 billion is you can call it a fair valuation, a good valuation, but I think there's a lot of upside coming in the next 2 years, on the valuation side. At least I hope so. That's why I've made the investment. I'm in this for the long term, and whether I increase my stake, whether I exit, it'll depend on the markets and the situation at that time. But I believe in this in the long term, and I think I'm going to be here, as a strategic partner and equity holder in the long term. I can't comment on whether I'll increase my stake at this stage, so we'll have to just wait and see.
Adar, just to go back to the point on the vaccine deal. Completely understand what you're saying because vaccine pricing really varies. Can you give us some visibility on how this deal is going to be operationalized? If not immediately COVID-19 boosters, what are the other vaccines that perhaps you've discussed with Biocon Biologics? And by when can we start seeing, actual revenue from this vaccine deal?
I think in about a year's time, you should see some EBITDA and revenue coming out of the vaccine deal as well. We've got so many new vaccines in our pipeline. It'll depend it'll be up to the management to decide which vaccines we put into this and what sort of opportunities we put into the 100 million dose capacity. That's yet to be decided. I think right now everyone is just trying to build up the cap table and the investors and all of that, and then we'll have some meetings and maybe we can share with you in the next few months what vaccines and what kind of revenue will really come out of it. At the moment, we were just focusing on just getting the deal done. So we can come back to this in a few months.
Okay. What is the status with regards to your tie-up with Wockhardt? You all were planning to roll out 2 vaccines from the UK plant. Where do things stand with regards to the tie-up there?
Well, again, that tie-up was to use the Wockhardt fill finish facility that they have in the UK. And again, that was meant for COVID vaccines.
Yeah.
We will now look at maybe some other vaccines that we want to sell in Europe or the UK with them. But at the moment, there aren't many opportunities there either. So again, it's a reservation of capacity that we have got with Wockhardt over there to utilize their fill finish lines. So again, we're just reevaluating what we can do over there.
Okay, so it's not generating any kind of revenue as of now?
No, not at the moment. Not at the moment.
Okay. Just on that point, Adar, we will be joined by the management of GSK later on, and they're launching their shingles vaccine in India. And that's the big question, that what is life like post-COVID-19 for the vaccine business? For example, what is your pipeline of vaccines looking like? And there was a lull in terms of people who were actually taking vaccines during COVID-19. A lot of people missed it. A lot of people just didn't want to go through with it. Where does it stand in terms of growth? What is your pipeline of growth when it comes to vaccines and even launches?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a very good question. The COVID pandemic, in a way, highlighted the power of what vaccines can do. A lot of people now know what vaccines are. People didn't even know what vaccines were before that, at least the adult population. Generally, vaccines were just given, by the mothers to their children. Adults generally don't take vaccines. But now, if you look at our pipeline also with the HPV vaccine to prevent cervical cancer in women, we've got the malaria vaccine also for the African continent. We've got so many vaccines, and now, of course, shingles is an adult vaccine that, as you mentioned, GSK will do. So the vaccine market is going to grow at least 2 or 3 times in terms of the adult vaccine market over the next 5 years. And we're very well poised, to take advantage of that with our pipeline, as I mentioned, with these 2 products and some of the other meningitis vaccines also that we hope to launch. So some of that those sales will be in India. Some of that will be, overseas. We've got a yellow fever vaccine also for travelers, going to the African continent. So we've got quite a bit in our pipeline. And I'm very optimistic on the vaccines, post-COVID as well. And even as far as COVID vaccines go, I'm sure there's going to be a booster market every year. Now, what volumes and what pricing that will be at, it's tough to say. But I do see a small market for booster vaccines for COVID as well.
Adar, just on that point, as we wind down the conversation, I wanted to get your take exactly on that, because there's no clear booster mandate in India on the 3rd shot. Even if you go to many hospitals, they'll simply tell you that there's no availability. Can you tell us, first of all, in terms of inventory, did you all lose a lot on excess vaccines? And what is the situation like metro, non-metro, in terms of just the vaccine availability? Because at least here in Mumbai, I have asked, personally 2-3 places, and no one seems to be giving boosters, even if you want one.
Yes. So, it was a chicken or the egg situation where if there was no demand, there was no need for manufacturers to make vaccines. Now, I've made 5 to 6 million doses, which I'm now trying to distribute to, various private hospitals and CVCs and all these vaccination centers, so that at least when you go on the CoWIN app and you try to book an appointment, the stock availability is there. But what we're struggling with, and everyone who's made COVID vaccines in India is struggling with, is that the hospitals are very wary and or sort of scared to, purchase or order vaccine doses at the moment. We've even offered the vaccine free of charge for the hospitals to keep on a, as you sell, pay us sort of situation, pay as you go kind of scheme. And I hope that helps build up the inventory in the hospitals, because everywhere we keep hearing that people want to take a COVID booster in some cases, but the stock is not available. But that's also because the private hospitals are not willing to keep the stock because they're afraid that, if they don't use it. There was an instance last year where hospitals also went into a bit of a loss where they had to throw away doses. And yes, I had to destroy more than 100 million doses because the expiry had passed and there were no takers. So it is a bit of a chicken or the egg situation here, and we're hoping that the private hospitals will slowly start stocking up and use this pay-as-you-go scheme that, we're not charging anything to the hospitals. We're saying you keep the stock with you, and if and when you sell it, then you pay us.
Adar, you all have restarted the manufacturing of Covishield, correct?
Just to the tune of 5 to 6 million doses. It's not much. It's just, again, as a precaution in case, again, suddenly there's an uptake, at least we have the stock. So we've done whatever we can to make the stock available and look at any opportunities that may arise as a booster demand. Look, a lot of people are a little bit fed up of taking COVID vaccines and all that, so there was that lethargy. But there is a small segment that still wants to take boosters, and what I've always said is that it's the elderly that need to take it. It's not, ages of 30, 40, 50. It's beyond 60 years of age that I would recommend that as a precaution you take a booster like Covovax, which is proven to be, for example, very good against the Omicron and its subvariants.
Okay, Adar, just before we let you go, since we have you here, I'm just going to ask you about your plans in terms of possible listing of Serum. Is that a plan that you've probably recontemplated, gone back to the drawing board?
No. I think, at the time of the pandemic, we had looked at raising some private equity because we needed $2 billion. But then I managed that funding through other means of taking advances from countries and going to philanthropists to help out. But at the moment, having one listed company is more than enough with Poonawalla FinCorp, which, as you know, is doing quite well. And we even recently got a AAA rating for Poonawalla FinCorp for the long-term borrowing, from CRISIL. So I think, I'm just focusing on Poonawalla FinCorp as our listed entity at the moment in the group, and focusing on our pipeline and getting a lot of clinical trials and all that for Serum Institute underway, which will help speed up launching a lot of these vaccines.
Okay, all right, Adar, a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much for answering all of those questions patiently, very helpful, and gives us plenty of insights. Thank you. Well, that's the word from Adar Poonawalla. And to take the conversation forward, we now have with us Nithya Balasubramaniam, Director